What are you doing to protect us? This comes from the nonprofit, nonpartisan, independent, and totally mighty Cardinal News, quote, serving Southwest and Southside Virginia. The Democratic Speaker of the House in Virginia told Cardinal News this week that earlier this month, a neighbor of his who works for the VA, works for the Veterans Administration, stopped him and asked him, quote, what are you doing to protect us? With the Trump administration carrying out mass indiscriminate firings of the federal government workforce, he says his neighbor told him, quote, y'all need to look into it now. 3 days later, Virginia House Speaker Don Scott announced a new bipartisan emergency committee in the Virginia legislature to study the effect of the federal job cuts and to figure out how to help Virginia residents whose lives have been torn apart by the chaos and the crisis in Washington as the Trump administration dismantles much of the federal government. The state of Virginia has the second largest population of federal workers of any state. About 1 in every 60 people works for the federal government. The state economy also gets more money from federal contracts than any other state in the country, more than $100 billion last year alone. Speaker Scott tells Cardinal News that what he is trying to do in the legislature is, quote, look at the facts, the hard data, the sobering, boring facts. He says, quote, right now they are taking a sledgehammer to everything. I don't want to be in a position where we are panicking. Joining us now is Virginia House of Delegates Speaker Don Scott. He is the first African-American Speaker of the Virginia legislature's 400-year history. Speaker Scott, I really appreciate you being here with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. It's an honor to be on.
I can tell a little bit about the impact of what's happening in Washington on the good people of Virginia just by looking at the numbers, looking at the proportion of Virginians who have jobs with the federal government or who are contractors paid by the federal government, looking at the raw numbers in terms of how much of the state's economy is buoyed by federal contracts tied to the federal government. So I can see how vulnerable Virginia is, particularly to this chaos. But what can you tell me about how it is resonating thus far, how it is affecting people on the ground in your state?
Thank you, Rachel. I live in a community in Portsmouth, Virginia. The Portsmouth Naval Hospital is there, not far, a few miles away. It's the largest naval station in the world, Norfolk Naval Base. I'm a former naval officer and a veteran. Every single day, I get to see those folks and see how they're being impacted. We have a Veterans Hospital, the largest one right across in Hampton, Virginia. And it's on a land where they have a lease there. And then Elon Musk is saying he's going to end that lease. Well, who'll take care of our veterans? Who's going to protect them? These people that put their lives on the line many times before to protect our country. And guess what? Many of them are Republicans and Democrats. And they always stuck together. And right now I'm worried about our country a little bit. But it's not the time to panic, it's the time to fight. I'm worried because it looks like we've lost the ability to have any empathy for people. You know, people whose spouses are worried about where they're going to live, where their next paycheck is going to come from. They're worried about their health care. They're worried about they're going to be able to take care of their children, their families. We're seeing this impact and it's playing out in real time. And so we have a responsibility in government. I believe state government, we still have a responsibility to make sure that we're protecting people, but we're finding out the data. We don't want to panic. We don't want to go astray because that's what Donald Trump wants us to do. He wants everybody to go look around and lose their minds and not sit down and look at the facts, look at the data. That's why we formed this emergency committee, so we can actually look at what's happened in Virginia. That's what we do. That's what Americans always do. We live in the greatest country on the planet. Our Constitution has a clear outline how we separate powers. If Congress and the Republicans there won't do their jobs, then we'll do our jobs and make sure that we step up to protect families, because that's what our responsibility is. As we're hearing from people, they're hurting here in Virginia. And it's really sad that not one Republican, not one in Virginia, will step up and say what the President of the United States is doing is wrong. Not one will step up and challenge Elon Musk, who's now an unelected multi-billionaire. Not one will step up and challenge him. And so we have a responsibility, I think, to get the facts, to get informed folks. And I think when we do that, then I think we will get some allies from the Republican Party. I hope we'll get some. But if they don't, I'm hoping that every single Democrat, because right now our country and our vision is on the line, will step in and help us. We have an election here in November 2025. I'm hoping that every single Democrat in this country will come to our aid to help fight for the values that we've all that we've all grown up knowing and believing in the vision of America and the dream. And I think right now there are some people trying to take us backwards, and we have a responsibility to fight for that and an obligation. When I took that oath as a naval officer years ago, I hadn't forgotten it. And when I took that same oath here as Speaker of the House to protect and defend our Constitution, and right now it's time for all patriots to step up and fight back.
Virginia House Delegate Speaker Don Scott, thank you for your time tonight. We've been following this closely, and we will continue to. You would think it would be an advantage to have a governor who's the same party as the president, who's supposedly so close and so complimentary to the president. So far, it hasn't seemed to pay any dividends for Virginia at all. We'd love to stay in touch with you, sir, as we watch how this unfolds in your state. You're really at the tip of the spear here.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having. I'm hoping that these Republicans will step up. They're celebrating these job cuts in Virginia when really they should be fighting back for us. We hope that they will. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll be right back.